Hi there. Welcome to Creation Station Monthly. You've already heard me say this a bunch of times, but this is our monthly show. We're going to go longer. We're going to go about an hour. We've got a really good topic today, and we're going to talk to two strangers who have never met before the last 30 seconds and talk about women in tech. This month is Creation Station Month, if you haven't been following the weekly podcast. And more importantly, March is Women's History Month. And so we have two women who are making history because they are both big in tech, even if you haven't heard their names before. Karishma, introduce yourself and fill us in on what you do. And Gabby, just follow right up on her.
Right. It's interesting because what I do right now, people would think that, well, this is in no way related to tech. I'm a journalist. And so I write. That's what I do day to day. But I have a background as a computer engineer. And then I use some of that background where I've learned how to code in my day to day workings for some freelance articles in the past. And otherwise, I wrote a piece that basically scanned 101 financial firms in the country, including Goldman, Point 72, name it, the most influential of the lot, right? And we asked them for their employee benefits. Why that? Because we just always felt that that was very a squiggly sort of space. People always boasted and doubted about the employee benefits, but they never really, gave people details in full. So I used my data skill there to sort of make a drop down box, which sort of helps and push this idea of transparency around financial firms. So some of my data skills was used there. And then I wrote about diversity in tech, which again, I sort of had to scan through a lot of data or EEO1 reports, specifically what they're called. So I'm not per se in tech right now, but tech.
No, that's all tech. Reporting on tech, talking about tech, using tech is all that's all right in there. And Gabby, you have been in tech for it feels like you've been in forever. But give us your quick bio here, and Charisma, jump in whenever you want.
Okay, quick, I guess TLDR on my journey. I have been in tech since 2015. That's when I graduated college. But I guess technically before that, because I was in college, I was a computer science major, did a lot of internships. But I've been in the professional tech space since 2015. I started my journey at Microsoft as back then they were called technical evangelists, but now the term you might know is like a developer advocate, which is really fun because I got to still code and make cool projects, but you're very social. So you are making these projects, making these demos, but you're going out into the world and doing conferences, workshops, and teaching people about the technology of your company. So that, I guess, helped my tech skills, but also my social skills. From there, I switched into being a software engineer for a little bit, where I really focused on Azure solutions with Internet of Things, and I got really into hardware. And that inspired me to actually go back to get my master's in electrical engineering while I was working. That was a lot of fun.
That's where I picked up your story, was when you stepped back in 2019 when you were doing all that craziness.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was fun, and it helped, especially with the Internet of Things and learning more about hardware. Because that when I was doing Internet of Things, I'd get these hardware errors, and I would not know what any of them meant. So it just gave me more perspective and more love for it. Ultimately, then after I got my master's, I thought I was going to transition into more hardware engineering, but I actually pivoted into product management. And I was a product manager for Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code, making JavaScript tooling, which I really love because I was a JavaScript developer myself. And from there, I just wanted something a bit more fast-paced, more action, that was a bit more consumer-facing. So I transitioned to being a product manager at the NBA, or as some people would like to hear, the National Basketball Association, where I focus on building out the digital experiences for the NBA major events like All-Star Weekend, playoffs, the draft, XYZ. So I am really busy right now.
Yeah.
As you know, it's kind of like as All-Star ends, we kind of start pumping into playoffs. So it is playoffs planning. Honestly, some people started asking me about draft already, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So that's what I do on my free time. And when I do have extra time, I have like worked at several coding boot camps. I've taught there. I love teaching people how to code. I've done my own workshops under No Way She Codes. And with my own business, I do like website development and technological consulting.
Yeah.
I see that you're wearing a CUNY t-shirt. I say that because I graduated from CUNY.
Oh, this is awkward. I'm slightly an imposter. I did not go to CUNY College, but I am from Staten Island, and this is a college of Staten Island, CSI. So my mom went there. I went to Florida State, but this is how like I represent where I'm from. So sorry.
That's all right.
So I want to find our first question that I want you guys to think about is we'll go with the deep part, with the harder, more somewhat obvious question is, what do you two think society thinks of your job and you doing it? Because Gabby, I know you just did a thing on your Instagram feed about that exact topic of why are you following me? Because so fill us in a little bit about that, about what do you think society thinks about women in tech first, and then what do you wish they thought about?
Okay. Karishma, you want to go first? Or?
Go for it, guys.
I'll let you take the charge.
Okay. I think society just in general, like, I feel like people really have no clue unless you're in it. Like if you're not in tech, people just think we're making all these things, they're coming out of nowhere, things are just happening, right? They don't always have the insight. Like when I talk to my mom about stuff, she's like, well, you could just put this together. And I'm like, no, that's not how that works. You know, like there's so many steps. But I think speaking on women in tech specifically, I think society now is more excited about it versus, and I think society now is excited about women in anything, right? Like there's been so much of a push, like also going back to the whole NBA thing, like women in basketball is taking off, right? So it excites me that women in anything are really like taking charge and XYZ. And you're seeing so many women getting roles in tech, in engineering, outside of engineering. And you're seeing those numbers really push, really drive, especially in a field that is like white male dominated, right? And I think before it was kind of harder because as women, we're dealing with these certain stereotypes that we still deal with today. But I think we have a lot more advocates of like, you know, we are able to do this job. Sometimes we're better at the job than our peers, you know? So it's just an exciting time for women in tech in general.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that your mom was like, oh, you can just put this together. And like sort of people don't understand what we do. And I just want to sort of tap onto that and say that it's not just you, but I feel like it's literally most mothers out there, because my mom doesn't even read, and it's writing. It's not complicated, right? I'm not talking about what's happening in the back end. I'm not talking about UI, UX in the front end, nothing around that sort. I'm just saying, this is an article that I wrote. This is too complicated for me. So I feel it's mothers everywhere around that. But in general, I do sort of echo what Gabrielle is saying around, you know, that there is more advocacy around it. We can always use more. I think so, because I feel just good causes need as much advocacy till the time, you know, the society itself comes to a point where we think there is more equality, both not just in the lower levels but in the upper levels, and at the top management. And I say that because I did write a story around Asian diversity in tech companies, and that story looked at and in no way sort of blowing on trumpet, but that story really did deeper into what the numbers look like. And there were so many analysts, so many software engineers within tech who were Asian. But then when you went up to the higher management, even though the CEOs, a lot of them are Indians right now, but when you went up to the top management, you sort of saw that the numbers declined big. So just sort of tapping around that, I think in general, irrespective of what people on the outside think and believe what tech is, I think advocacy around how we need more diverse people representing the rest of the crowd is needed. We need more women into it, and you know that'll always be helpful. And I think Gabrielle will perfectly correct when you're saying that there's more around it, and there's more clarity around it as well. Because if you think about any of the stories that we've been writing over the past 5 to 6 months, I probably wouldn't be too wrong if I say over the past 1 year, it has all been around AI. Artificial intelligence is literally everything that we write about when we talk about tech, and it's kind of getting a little repetitive, but then it is completely true at the end of the day, right? Because we are seeing this advancement that's happening at a faster pace than it was earlier. So if you talk to the big guys, people at some of the biggest investment management firms, and everybody wants to know how you've incorporated AI. And if you talk to them, they go like, well, we were already doing those things, which is accurate. They were already actually doing some of those things. But what has happened since the whole chat GPT entrance is that they have been pushed to do it so much more faster than they were ever doing before. And so that's really the shift that has happened. Not that everybody's doing AI now, but it's just that the supply chain intelligence was already in place. Now people are just asking for more. So yeah, I just think around, irrespective of what people think about what we do as people who can code, it's more important as to what advocacy is around there, around more people who are diverse, and at the same time women, and as well as good talent.
Yeah, I can echo that one. We did our first AI show, monthly show, back in 2021. It was not like we were like, okay, well, this is gonna be coming, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh, how come we haven't talked about it? I'm like, we did. People do talk about these things, and you both bring up that idea. I want to, because one of my questions always is, who was your mentor that helped you get started? Because I ask this all the time about how did you get in? Was there someone that helped you into the door? And you both already said, women advocating for other women is obviously a huge part of that now.
Yeah.
But because I know it hasn't been like that for long to have enough women there to advocate for other women. So who did you get a chance to help you get into the field?
Karishma, you can go first.
Yeah. So essentially, a question is whether it was a woman who pushed me ahead to sort of help me,
or whoever, because we all, because I know you had women helping you afterwards, but it was how'd you get into it?
Definitely. So my background is kind of unique in the sense that I've been born and brought up in India all my life. I moved here just about 6 years ago at this point. So my education, the idea of getting into engineering was really pushed on by my parents, which is pretty much all the Indians out there, the 1.4 billion of us. But also my education was by sort of it was in India at a university in India where it was there was a mix of both men and women who were teaching code. In terms of my mentor around that time, the education around, it's no secret that education in India, when it comes especially around engineering, if you're not from one of the very top schools, it's not as great. So there wasn't much support on the idea of like, oh, you're a woman, or rather, we don't see so much of representation of women there. Help us understand how we can make it a more equitable society. There's none of those conversations there, and that I think also latches onto Gabrielle's point around this is something new that's happening, or something very recent. So that wasn't the case. But when I came here at CUNY, we had a data journalism course, and I don't know if CUNY was the first or one of the first to sort of push in the idea of like, hey, journalists, you guys need to sort of work with data. That's important. But there were professors there who are still working with Bloomberg. And for me, if I have to sort of mention the mentor who sort of pushed the idea of like, hey, use data skills in your bag as a way to get a job here, as a way to write stories here, that would be somebody called Sandeep Janarkar. Ironically, he's also an Indian, But he's been working at CUNY. He's, I believe, a tenured professor, but more importantly, he's working at Bloomberg News. So he's helping journalists know how to use data tools, including, different languages out there from Python to R and otherwise, to write better stories. And so for me, it wasn't a woman, but it was somebody from the same sort of background.
I'm gonna highlight different people because it was a hard question for me to answer because I feel like at what phase are we talking about, right?
Yeah.
So just getting into computer science, my mom has been telling me. So I'm not Indian, clearly. I'm Haitian and Caribbean, kind of similar. Like you're either a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, something like that, right? And my mom, she herself is a nurse, but as a teenager, I was just always on the computer. I was always downloading something, trying something, building something. I just knew how to do all these things that she was just amazed by. And she'd always say, like, you should go to MIT. You should get into computers. You should. I'd be like, no. Mind you, my dad, my whole life has always been in tech. I just never asked him what he did. Never. Just never. I just that doesn't look fun. So I never cared. And my mom would always tell me, you should apply yourself to computer science, you should do whatever. And I didn't. And it wasn't until my junior year of college is when I actually changed my major to computer science. And so she was like, I knew it the whole time. But as I'm transitioning into computer science, when you're a junior, you're starting to look for internships and you need an opportunity. And so the next person I would call out, she was my mentor in college. Her name is Kai Daniels. And she got me an internship at General Motors. And that's a big deal to have a big name on your resume as an intern. Once you're going to find a job, you can almost get a job anywhere, right? So she absolutely helped me get my internship at General Motors, got my foot in the door. And I learned, I did real world projects there, learned a lot of real world experiences. It was great. But I really think without that internship, I don't think I would have been seen by Microsoft, right? So when I got to Microsoft, that's a whole other story. But when I got there, someone who also took me under her wing, also a woman, and she had a lot of similar experiences than me, but she advocated for me. She taught me the way and mentored me through. Her name is Maria Nagaga. She is still also at Microsoft. Along with her, two other, these are males I would like to call out, is David Washington. He was one of my bosses at Microsoft. And Scott Hanselman. They were two men that were also always advocating for my work. How can I be better? How can I push myself? And I think they helped me mentor through. And then the last person I want to call out, and this is in my product management journey. Maria and Scott were a part of my product management journey as well. They were with me through my whole Microsoft career, actually. But now that I'm at the MBA, is my boss now, and his name is John Campbell. And it's funny because as I was interviewing, you talk to your boss, but you talk to all these other people. And all these other people would be like, yeah, you're going to be on John's team. He's a great advocate for women in this space, right? Sometimes you think people just say things you just want to make it sound good. But honestly, I've been at the NBA now for 2 years, and he's probably one of the best bosses I've ever had in my life. I don't know if he's going to watch this. And I'm just saying in general, he has, he challenges me. He makes me think about things in a different way. And that's advocacy, that's mentorship. He gives me opportunity to be in the limelight, in front, get my work out there. And I couldn't ask for a better boss. And that's my current boss. And I feel like I need that right now. So those are a lot of people, but I'm gonna have to put this in them so they know.
It takes a village, and everybody there's way more people that neither of you mentioned. We understand that, but these are the people that stick out and help. That's kind of what I want to try and explore with you more is, so that's how you got started, and you've got some of those people that are right there. What do you think someone out there right now who's looking at this as a woman, young teen girls in high school or whatever, what is that piece of advice you want to give them to say, this is what you can do, whether they want to make it a career or not? And I think that's kind of important, because you can be in tech, you can be interested in this stuff and pay attention to it without saying, and that's what I want to do as my job. Just like you said, Gabby, with, you didn't really want to be a computer engineer. You just kind of,
yeah.
So, I mean, what advice would you give to that teenage girl out there that's just like, no, I'm interested in tech, but
I would say try it. And the reason I know that's like really generic, right? But one thing I've learned, and it was also something that made me want to go to the NBA, is that there's tech in everything. There's not an industry today. There is not one industry today that does not have some type of technical role. It could be fashion, cosmetics, luxury brands, all the things that you like and love have some sort of tech aspect to it. Everybody has an app. Everybody, like, it's that simple, right? So you can find a way to learn how to code or learn more about the technical space and take that skill and align it with other things you're passionate about. And even if you don't go into tech, it's just a great skill to have. If one day it's like, maybe I do want to try this as a job, it's an option.
Yeah. And again, I second this, but not just because that comes as a tip to teenagers, but also like that's exactly what I did. It was something that I tried it, and then for me it was looking at my managers and being like, well, they like their job, do I want to be them? And so when the answer came in no, I was like, how can I use these skills elsewhere? And so that's exactly what happened. Even though I really didn't plan this career out, it just so happened that data journalists are now so much in need within the industry as well. And again, I think it adds on to the point of like tech is everywhere, because it's this place that you just have to be in. If you talk about retailers, Macy's and otherwise, everybody's talking about how they're incorporating AI. At one point you'd be like, well, how are you incorporating AI? But then the supply chain is incorporating AI. Everyone's doing something with tech one way or the other. And again, to sort of talk about tips for teenagers, it's just the idea: try it, see what you think about it. See if this is for you, and if it's not, it will be skills that you'll use it at some other point in life. It's most like there are higher chances for that to happen than not. That's one way to look at it.
We're going to actually tackle data science next month on the monthly show to dive into that with some people.
Yeah. I
Now,
have a lot of engineering or tech friends in San
Yeah.
Francisco and California for obvious reasons. And they're data scientists and they're earning big.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they love to talk.
So tell me, as we're talking about this, the first thing that comes to mind is, what is the difference in between tech per se? And by the way, you guys are getting good comments out there. The difference in a technology type of thing versus the influencer imagery kind of thing that some people think is like, oh, well, I'm going to be in popular, or I'm going to be doing these things as a social media person, which seems to me to be more celebrity than tech. But am I wrong? I don't know. Tell me.
That's a hard. Okay. I think it's someone with a following who, like, I try to me being a tech influencer looks like different than somebody else being a tech influencer.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just where you kind of fall in, right? So you can say I work in tech and all you're really doing is promoting tech products. One of my favorite tech influencers, she's more so about the hardware stuff. Like, she's getting cameras, she's getting new devices, she's getting new games. And her job as a tech influencer is to review those products. Versus my platform as a tech influencer is more so giving advice, sharing experiences, helping people navigate through the tech field. But we're both tech influencers, right? And then there's also the tech influencer who are helping people break into tech with jobs that don't include coding. I know a lot of tech influencers like that. So I think it varies, right? So to say I think at this point, like at one point people used to say, oh, I work in tech, and you automatically think, oh, you code or you do some type of like engineering. But I think today, like, to say I work in tech is like an umbrella of so many things. And that's because of, the different resources. That's because of AI. Now people can work in tech because they know how to leverage AI, right?
Yeah.
That is because of social media is opening up these different avenues to teach different skills in different ways or provide different services in different ways. So tech is now an umbrella, not just a one section thing where it's like, oh, well, you have to know how to code to be in tech. I don't think that's true anymore.
And I know, Gabby, you helped out the library years ago. You probably don't even remember those emails about us helping do a coding camp here
Really?
in Broward County Library. Yeah, you did. Yeah.
I used to love.
Yeah.
I if you still want to do one, let me know. I missed doing.
Oh yeah, no, we.
Yeah. So long.
Yeah, we'll hit you up again.
Okay.
And Karishma, tell me about that, and fill me in on that part of it of influencer versus celebrity versus tech. How you see that all blend in for yours, and add on to it, please, for me, your social media presence. Like, what do you think you need to do as a woman in tech nowadays as a presence like that? Because as Gabby was saying, you can just review things, you can do things, but how do you as a tech journalist feel about that going out?
Yeah. I was just sort of pulling out my Twitter for this. I say that because I've always had this sort of background cover for my Twitter that I've at this point kind of forgotten, but it's at the back of my head, which says, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. And I really hold that to the heart, because I think as a journalist, we always need data sort of corroborate. Otherwise, it's just a statement or an opinion that we are saying. All of these data comes from a lot of sort of crunching of numbers, which happens at the back end. So that, it's when we talk about social media presence, it's important to sort of put yourself in a place where you tell people, at least as a journalist, as a journalist who knows how to use the data tools, is to sort of put myself out there and say that, hey, I know how to do that. And I've done stories. As a journalist, again, if you're aware of how these languages are constantly evolving, it's hard to sort of keep up with it. Because at one time when I just entered into the field, as an engineer, I was working for Broadridge, which is this massive company, I believe a $24 billion company. I was working as one of their subsidiaries. I was a software engineer for them all the way back in India, before I became a journalist, and I shifted my career. But since at that time, when I learned how to code, it was C++, then became Java. And then when I came here, everybody was talking about Python and R. And I was like, why am I learning R? But then it was just something that was required within journalism as well. Or not required, let me tone down the language there, but like something that was, a lot of employers would desire the journalist to have. So, I feel that there's constant evolution, and the way, as a journalist who knows how to work with these tools, the way I keep up, or the way I showcase, future employers or anybody else, is that to sort of, through my clips, to sort of tell people that, I've used these skills to write this story. So for me, that's the kind of translation, and that's the kind of social media presence. And of course, being true to yourself, that background on my Twitter is just something that has been there for years.
Yeah.
That basically just signifies what I truly believe. And so that's my take on it.
So let me have you follow up on the AI portion of that, because everyone has the sky is falling. AI is going to take my job. We're not going to need coders anymore because AI can do it. Or you don't need journalists anymore because AI can do it. And I know the three of us know how wrong that is. But fill us in on what's that like talking with people as a tech journalist about here, AI is exciting. We want to talk about it, but here's the real truth behind it.
I mean, there's so many aspects to it that is just so hard to sort of concise it into one. But essentially, when we talk about AI taking jobs, especially within the journalism industry, it works in a different way altogether. It works in a way of like, are you a journalist who's just simply taking out what's happening in the wires and writing one or two lines, then is the threat to your job higher than the threat to somebody's job who's basically going out of the fields, or actually, crunching numbers and analyzing, and then, telling the world what it means on a macro perspective. So the threat to jobs is sort of goes from, there are different degrees to it. But have we seen it really taken shape that way? It's hard to sort of quantify, because you do have all of I think Google just came out with a new partnership where they sort of said that we're going to work with different publications and we're going to take their data to write stories. And it was a 6-month pilot program. I don't know where it stands right now, but they were going to pay publications to do that. So there are different ways this is happening. But all the way, it all just goes out to say that it's not always, this is not something new. That when the advent of technology came in, there was the same conversation that was happening then. This is the same conversation that are happening now. It goes to see how it's going to unfold. But again, going back to the point, I think the impact on every industry is different, but you really can't replace, human work in a lot of things. Gabrielle, I'm wondering what you're thinking about it.
Oh, well, he asked you as the. I thought that was your
No,
question.
you go too. We want to hear your opinion
I know
on
what you're
this.
saying as like because you phrased the question as like as the reporter that she is, like the journalist that she is.
You've got AI affecting your job too.
I don't feel that way. I don't feel that.
Good.
I don't feel that AI is affecting my job. I feel like AI is a bonus tool, right? And I think if the world thought of it more as that, then it's taking my job. We probably could progress a lot further. And so it is a tool that maybe does little things for you, right? It could either be a time management tool. Like sometimes it's like, listen, I need you. I gotta write some of these user stories. Give me some ideas. Like this is what I'm trying to do. Give me some ideas. And not to say you take what it gives you and you copy and paste that, because I think that's where a lot of people get things wrong too. Like the reason why AI will never take your job is because AI will never have enough context of what you're doing to execute it 110%, right? Like you should use it as like a good base, take it and turn it into your own thing. And that's where the tool comes from. And I think that can go for any job. So whether, like I said, it's time management, whether it's just like help me brainstorm some ideas, because I feel like I use AI within my role. Hey, I wrote this email. Does this sound professional enough? When you're talking to higher ups, but I also use AI for like my content creation, like help me plan my calendar for the year. What are some ideas that people want to know about in tech? And they'll shoot me out 30 ideas. Or what are like trending hashtags in tech that I make sure I can use, right? So it's a good tool, but I don't think it could ever be me, right? Like AI can never really give that personal feel, at least not right now. I know we have all seen, is it iRobot? Anyway, I know
there's all the super sci-fi things, but
yeah,
they're not close.
We're gonna get there. I don't know if we're gonna get there, but if we are, it's not gonna be today or tomorrow or anytime soon. So nobody freak out right now. It's okay.
I know. We've done this before. We've had huge disruptions before that everybody thought the world was going to end, and we've moved on. I think everybody forgets the fact it took us 20 years to go from walking and horses to full-blown highways and cars. It just, So my question I always ask is, what is your ultimate dream, wish, idea for equipment? What's that magical piece of equipment or tech or something that you want that would make your life in your field so much better, or just your life overall better?
I feel like mine is so basic.
No, it's not.
I really need that thing. It's like the portable monitor, but you attach it to your laptop and you just open it up.
You don't want VR instead? To just put it into a full
I'm not,
or AR. I'd rather do it AR than VR.
I don't headsets, maybe because I'm slightly claustrophobic. Headsets aren't doing it for me. It'd be cool if it was on my glasses. Like if I have my glasses on and it's like,
come on in and we'll put the Magic Leap headset on you and you'll get a chance to try it.
Maybe I'm actually
that's just the glasses,
Yeah, so maybe the glasses, but like a full headset, like that's gonna freak me out a little bit. So I couldn't do that. So for me, it's really just I like working wherever I want to be. That's the one of the greatest things about remote work. But it's like I would love to just be able to have 3 screens all the time. Very, very basic ask, but I need it. Need it.
One of my friends has it, and he just showed it to me at his new house as to like how it just opens up, and he loves it. He absolutely loves it and says it's one of his best investments. So I totally agree. It's one of the simplest things to ask, but it makes sense.
I don't need a keyboard. I don't need anything else. Just flip the 2 additional screens to my 1 screen. Just give me 3 screens. That's all I need. I'm a very simple person.
Tell us, Karishma.
I mean, just to sort of again piggyback off you, I think it's not just the expanding screen, but I sort of see a lot of people in my field have sort of the curved monitor, and I just saw on Twitter that there was a deal on it, and the Samsung one was about $540 instead of the $1,000 or something that it usually goes for. I think it was by one of the slick deals guys, and I was like, wait, that's half the price, but do I have the money to put in $540?
Yeah.
Not yet, but maybe someday.
Yeah.
On screen.
Yeah, I can. I have the idea of like getting that big massive monitor too, but we've got the multiple monitors, and I can make do with a bezel in the middle. It's okay. So here's the harder question for you both. Mm-hmm. You guys both already talked about it. You guys have done really good. You've had really great successes. What's the failure that happened to you that spurred you on, that you dealt with, and how did you build off of it? Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this and be politically correct.
You don't have to be politically correct. This is honest truth for everybody to see exactly what goes on in people's lives.
Karishma, do you have yours? Do you want to go first?
It's like it definitely has a bit. It's just not related so much to the tech part of the whole game, but it is life, as you said. For me, it's been just really challenging dealing with the immigration system of it all. So it's legal immigration in this country is some of the hardest things to do. And I've been going through it time and again and time and again. It's just constantly trying to prove yourself. I could have the best story using the best tools that I know, data or otherwise. I could produce some of the best work that nobody ever has, write exclusive stories, scoops. I could be really the best in my field, be it, data, be it as a data journalist or not. But still, I would, not get a chance to continue staying on, because it's just that the immigration system is such that and I'm sure if there's an Indian watching this, or Indian American, or really anybody who's even slightly familiar with the immigration system in the country, they would know that it's just not it's just so it needs so much reform in so many ways, that there's just so much to do, because I know with green card people have wait for years and years and years on, and you could do the best work and the best job, and it still may not land on your lap. So that's the life struggle that that people I think of my background have. Yeah,
that's fair. Yeah. How about it, Gabby?
For me, I think it's my failure. I don't like the word failure, because I feel like a lot of times things are a lesson, right? Like on a project, you mess up on whatever, a deliverable, it's okay. We all do it. Let it go. Move on. Right. But I think when you fail is when you start to fail yourself, not the job. A job is a job. Your job will replace you. It doesn't matter. But when you start to move in a way that fails yourself, that's a failure. So for me, I think mine was kind of being loyal or staying in a situation or a specific role when I knew I didn't have the best support system, when I knew that like I have to quadruply prove myself in order to move in this role, was a failure to myself. Because I was doubting that like I am doing good work. I'm believing the system that's telling me like you're not doing good work, or you're just not up to par, when I'm seeing peers do less than I am, excelling further, right? Right. And I just felt like this need to like prove to them like I am this. Nobody has time for that. And that's only gonna honestly, I feel like it hindered my career and pushed me back further, trying to prove to a select few of people that like I am these things that you think I'm not. And that was a failure to myself versus like, you know, oh, I messed up on something and I didn't fix it the next time. Like that's just a lesson. That's learning. That's life. But when you start holding yourself back, that's a failure.
I think that's really nicely put, because I think all of us in our career are always in one spot where we sort of go like, wait, I think I'm doing this and I'm doing this right. Wait, I'll try to do it again. Let me try to do this a different way.
Yep.
Wait, why did this person get a promotion? Or why, how, I thought I was good enough. And so then we start doubting ourselves whether we are good enough or not. So I think that's very nicely put, because I feel everybody goes through the stage where you sort of question whether you're good enough or not. And I'm not saying that you may or may not be doing enough, but that's just, I guess the bigger question to ask at that time is like, where is that coming from?
Yeah.
Is that coming from like suddenly you not doing the work which you've been doing all this while and like learning all this while? Or is it coming from, the kind of responses that you're getting from the management?
And I think, yeah, it's like I kind of learned at that moment, like if it just doesn't work, don't force it to work. If you can't work well with a person, doesn't make that person a bad person. Does it make you a bad person? It just doesn't work. So like find a situation that works for you, because it'll flow so much better the way it's supposed to.
Yeah. And I just want to take this moment to sort of like emphasize how important it is for good management.
Yes. Amen.
In every industry. I cannot.
Quit jobs, quit managing.
And I don't know why, but like I think it's just there needs to be more. I may be wrong, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but does there need to be more management training? Is that the solution to things, or is it just that people are just not? I think it's too harsh to say that people are not born to be good managers, but what can change things so that, like, for example, you mentioned your mentor, right? You said that that you have somebody who is so good. He always puts you and shows off your work. I have somebody like that at my current place at Barron's. One of my editors, and he's always there at a meeting, right? If I'm pitching something, he'll be there. And if I'm fumbling or if I said something, he'll back up quickly and he'll be like, what she said, XYZ, just to sort of not fill in the holes, not fill in the gaps, but to sort of reinforce the same point. If I haven't said it, maybe they needed a little bit here and there tweaking, he'll be there. He'll be there to like post out an email to everybody, including the top management. Karishma did this story, da-da-da-da-da. And so these are small things. This would take probably a second out of your day as a manager. And, other things wouldn't just take a lot out of you. Set up weekly meetings with your people, right? Talk to them. How are they feeling? It doesn't have to be a personal conversation. It can be professional, but like just talking about one-on-one as to like, is everything going all right? Or is there anything that I can do to help? Just, it's not very commonly seen out there is what I'm saying. And I don't know if just overall everybody needs, a shift in the way people are doing things. But I just think that a good manager can completely change your career, and it can completely change your experience at the firm.
Mm-hmm. Agree, 110%. That's my whole life story.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a good point, is that that doesn't have anything to do with being a woman or a man. That
Right.
has to do with being a good manager for your team.
Mm-hmm.
And so what would you want to see from that kind of change as a team? And what you just made me think of was the whole work from home thing that's going on in the world, but particularly here in the United States, of management / your jobs, because you both have jobs you don't need to go to an office for. I'm guessing you don't need to be in a physical space. You can do your job. But how does that work out with you as part of your teams, as part of your management stuff? Or how is that really going right now? Because I've never had a chance to work from home. So
I'm sorry.
No, this is the library. We do this for the public. We have to be here to help the public. So I'm perfectly okay with that.
Okay.
But you guys have experience where I don't, of how does your team management, etc., work like that?
I'll go. Okay. I think for me, and this is what I've learned, right? And this goes back to if you work well with a person, if you don't work well with a person, there are still some people in the world that like just don't do well remote. So if you have a boss and they're actually a good boss, but they don't really do remote, I think it's better to go into the office, even if you don't want to. Maybe hybrid, because that's how you're going to work well with the person who's supposed to help you the most. I've been fortunate that almost every boss, almost most of the bosses I have been actually very good with remote. They've been good, like she said, with the weekly check-ins. We have team meetings consistently. We're always on board, but also like really good with like setting up in office time. Because even though I'm remote, like I'll maybe go in here or there, like as needed. So I think it's also it's a blend of your working style, but also the working style of your leader. And so I think as much as all of us want to be remote, like sometimes you might have to be a bit flexible, especially if you have a good leader, because you also want to build that relationship with them. So
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. You're right. It's a mix of going to office and staying at work, going to office when you need to be there versus if things can be done at home, then things can be done at home. Why are you making me pay the $2.99 at the subway one way and then another way? Anyway, not to be stingy here, but what I'm trying to say is that people who want to go to work, it's fair, and it goes for me as well. I like to go to work some days a week. I think it breaks down my work from home cycle, especially on Mondays. That's what I prefer. I know Mondays are some of the most hated days of the week, but at the same time, if I've been at home Saturday, Sunday, I need to sort of not see that space in my house, and I want to go out. So for me, Mondays work for me. Breaking up the week with 1 or 2 more days, that works. And that has actually worked fair. How would it be if I had to work every day of the week at work? I don't know, because again, I haven't worked in that kind of environment since I've moved to this country. My first job was when COVID hit. COVID sort of took a big surge in the country in March, early beginning. I mean, there were spurts of it in February, but come March, it was full blown, right? My job started around my birthday of March 2nd or 3rd. I was there for a week. The next week, I was told go on remote. And I still remember the first week I wore like the best dresses, name it, from Banana Republic, from Zara. I bought the clothes to look the part and to look the part that I wanted to be. And then the next week I was remote. But so I really don't know how the world would look like if we went back to everybody working in person. I guess MTA would make money for sure, much more. But then talking about um, what is best for the employee, I think that's something to consider as well. If all your employees are looking for working 3 days a week at office or 3 days a week at home and 2 days and sort of switching after a week like that, and that works for the company as well, then there has to be some incentive otherwise for me to do otherwise. And same for like the employers to call their employees back to work. Recently some of the incentives have looked like this scarcity or this fear of like losing your job. As a journalist, we've been reporting around the number of people who've lost jobs in tech like every other day. And it's been pretty scary. It is a scary environment. And so that comes off as some of the incentive that companies by large see as a reason to call employees back to work, which is kind of sad. But there has to be some other incentive, leaving the macro environment aside, for employees to go to work 24/7 in person. If all the employees like to work from home 3 days a week, then what are you providing for those 3 days for me to come in person? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I want to wrap up. We're already closing in on an hour because you guys are amazing. So I do want to wrap up with one more question for you, though. Tell us what you want to celebrate for women in tech, because a good chunk of our conversation has been applicable to male, female. It does not matter what your gender is. These are all great skills to have. These are all great ideas, comments. But in particular for women, what do you want to do? How do you want to be able to celebrate that to help people understand why it's so important?
I want to celebrate breaking barriers. And someone I'll also call out. I know I keep referencing Microsoft a lot, but this reference isn't about Microsoft. It is, but it's more so Xbox. So I like gaming. And it is a big deal to me that Sarah Bond is now running Xbox. Like, that is a huge deal. And we're constantly seeing so many women in, like, Karishma mentioned earlier, like, you know, when you start getting to higher management, you're starting to see like the numbers of diversity kind of dwindle. And so when you have women running these big corporations, like, we're literally breaking barriers and changing the numbers. And I think that's something that should be celebrated.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Women breaking barriers is one thing that definitely should be celebrated. And just on that note, I think in general, I think when you have more diversity and more representation, you sort of start seeing this push from the bottom up as well, where people go like, oh, well, if this person can do it, maybe I can do it too. And for me, it was personally, when I came to the country, I was like, I'm probably the first one to come in here and do journalism. I think nobody does it. And I'm like the first South Asian. It was such it came from a place of ignorance because I just didn't know. And then I was introduced to South Asian Journalism Association, where there were other data journalists as well. And I was like, whoa, and they're making money because there are these big publications. And I'm like, so I can do this too. And so it was sort of like this very clear thing for me that I think, you know, we read about it and we talk about it and people sort of like whoosh it under the carpet saying that, oh, this is just another person saying that diversity matters. But for me, it was clear and very evident coming from a place where I was like, well, I am going to do something so difficult, so challenging, nobody's done it, to a point coming where I'm like, so many other people have done it and so can I. So I think, you know, breaking barriers is definitely one thing that should be celebrated. And at the same time, I think going back to a point about like, you know, use tech in the way that you want to use tech, and that's fine. And, you know, tech becoming a bigger umbrella if you try, because basically everybody needs a lab, like Gabrielle said. So give it a shot, see if this is something of interest. And if you learn a thing or two, I'm sure you'll be able to use it next time somewhere else.
There we go. See, wisdom for everybody right there. Thank you both very much for this conversation. This is a lot of fun. The contact information for our guests is in the chat for you, if not, and it'll be posted up when we post out onto the podcast feeds so that you can reach out to them if you have questions or things, or reach out back to us. creationstation@broward.org comes right to me, and I will put you in touch with them if need be. Again, we'll see everybody next month. We're doing data science next month, keeping this theme going. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.